It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our Bible study about the theme to rest in Christ. We have today the subtitle, Finding Rest in Family Ties. We all know that the day of the Lord shall come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth and the works that are therein shall be burned up. So now all this shall melt away. How then shall be ye skillful with holy walk and godly nature, that ye wait and hasten to the future of the day of the Lord, when the heavens shall be consumed with fire, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. It's amazing the contrast that Peter, the apostle, pictures in this Bible verses. On the one hand, we see the power of God on the elements of nature. And on the other hand, we see the holy walk and the godly nature, the loving kindness of God in His human beings that He brought to be the enlightener of the world. So it's in both the power of God. And as much the Lord's power will be revealed on the elements, as much the power of God will be revealed through His people in a holy walk and a godly nature. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. Now, out of these Bible verses, we came to the conclusion that there is a period in which to expect the thief. It's a period in which to expect the child will be born. And we have seen you don't expect it in the 7th or the 3rd month, you expect it at the end of the 9th month. So, are we in the 9th month? Looking and on the coming of Jesus? Are we in that period in which He will come? Let's prove it. Why is this crisis the end-time crisis? Because it is a global crisis. It's encompassing the whole world. There is no place in this world that is not included in this crisis. And it's the repetition, so to say, of that crisis that we have in the Bible in the time of Noah. The whole world was corrupted, and God had to judge it. And He had made a plan to escape those who are faithful. So that's why Noah built the ark. There were no outward sign that the rain will come. But when the rain came, all that was not in the ark perished away. It was global. There was no space on earth that the water did not cover. So nothing escaped. And Jesus compares that time with our time. So it is a global crisis that we have exactly like in the time of Noah. It is about a general need of mankind, health. Now yes, health is not a basic need, it's a secondary need, but humans were indoctrinated that health is the most important thing they have in life. And of course, after health comes life. But both are just needed in order to serve. So you cannot make a global crisis if it is not a thing that includes all mankind. And since health is a means, a need for everyone, this crisis is a personal crisis. That is, not one human is excluded from it. It's exactly like in the time of Noah. There is not one that shall escape. He must be in one or the other side. It's a personal crisis because it is about something everyone needs. And this is why I find it so clear to understand Revelation 13, starting from verse 14, where it says, "And deceived them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bound, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." Now, how can one imagine that you can bring the whole humanity to do those things if there is not a need that is satisfied by that? That's why I cannot help myself. The best image of the beast is the virus, because he threatens everyone. And if you don't bow down in front of him, giving you the anti-dot, so to say, in your body, he will kill you. So here we have a need of man. And that's why you can bring all people to follow the image of the beast, because it is a danger for every one of them. This crisis is the end-time crisis because it is not about nationality, it's not about territory, it's not about who is stronger, it is just about what and whom does man believe. It's a pure spiritual crisis. You see, it's the same pure spiritual crisis as it was in the time of Noah. Noah preached something that they had to believe. But there was no sign except the ark. And of course, they had their wicked way of being that would be a sign for them, their corruption. But they were so blinded to themselves, probably, that they wouldn't have had seen that anything is wrong with them. But they had to believe Noah or disbelieve him. And now the devil makes it the same way. He brings this final crisis that we should believe him and not God. And he puts everyone that does not believe him under persecution and death. So it is a pure spiritual crisis. It's not about money. It's not about anything else. As what and whom do you believe? And that's why it's exactly the mirror of the time of Noah, which was also just a spiritual crisis. Now, mankind is divided in only two categories. All other crises or other difficulties might have put people in different parties, but this one does not permit you to be in different parties, just in one or the other. That's why if your faith is in God, you do God's will. If your faith is in humans and you believe their theories of science, then you must follow them by no choice. Because what you believe, you must do. So if you believe science, you must wear a mask. If you believe God, you don't. If you believe science, that you're a danger and the enemies can be in you, then you might make the tests. If you believe God, you don't need it. If you believe in science and the danger of something outside of you can kill you, then you must give yourself the injection. If you believe God, you don't need that, you know. That's nonsense. If you believe science, you must take the mark of the beast. And if you believe God, you won't take the mark of the beast. The final decision, the final thing. And there will be only two categories, like in the time of Noah. Those in the ark and those outside. And now the devil makes it outside, those who have the mark, they will be, so to say, safe, and those who don't have, they are the dangers. So, whom will you believe? Now, there is one very special thing in this final crisis, is that the danger lies only in the fellow man. The relations spread the enemy. So, it is not in the environment, it's not outside of you, it's just in you, the enemy. Because you can be a danger for the others by no choice, because you cannot control a nanoparticle, and the others cannot control it. But since the spread can be only from humans to humans, you must keep distance. You can hug an animal, you can be close to a dog or a horse or a cat, but stay away from your nephew, from your grandchildren, from your grandma, because there lies the danger. This is also something very particular for this end time crisis, because the enemy is exactly your fellow man. And this goes exactly against the law of God, because all of this end time crisis is the contention about the law of God. The law of God is the central point. And as we know how we function, we know that this must be also the final decision, whom we trust. And if we cannot love our neighbor as ourselves, that is, to give our lives for them, then we break the commandment. We prove that we do not have the Spirit of Christ. We are not in His love. We prove that. So let's look to the law of God, and then in the following presentations we will go deeper into this argument so that for everyone they might become very clear. So God has created His whole universe in a certain type, that is, every element must function as a channel, and He put it on that basic law, which is altruism. And altruism is nothing can exist or function by itself. That is, it must take. Nothing can be independent. That's the first 4 laws written on the first table. And nothing can do anything for itself. And that is, it must give. All serves a purpose. Everyone does the job God gave it. And that is written for our spirit in the 6 last commands of the 10 commandments. So this is the basic law. Everything functions according to it. But there is yet a difference, because we have different elements. We have the physical element and the spiritual element. The physical element is only able to react. The spirit has the ability to act and react and not react. So the physical element can be governed from outside. It can only be governed from outside, because it cannot have a government from inside, because it's physical. All input come from outside. But now the spirit can only govern himself from inside. You cannot give an injection in the spirit. You can do that in the body, but you cannot infuse something in the spirit. It's impossible. Because the spirit is a closed entity that no one can penetrate, not even God. God can destroy it, can make it not existent, but He cannot enter into that spirit or compel it to anything. That's why God gave the spirit the ability to know who it is. And if the spirit is a child of God, then of course he is empty, like the body is empty. He needs love, and he must supply his need from God. But it's not God who infuses you the thing. It is the ability of the Spirit that goes to take that information from God through faith. So he believes God's word through faith, and he binds to the Spirit of God through trust. That's the 2 elements that the Spirit does from inside out. So it's not God's fault if I'm missing something, because he puts all the needs to our disposition, to my disposition. It's just me missing it because I don't take it through faith and through trust from him. But it was not made for myself. It was made that I should pass it on. To whom? To the people and to the environment. God made us to co-work with humans. He made us to be partners, but never to be spiritually dependent on each other. This is the law. And as long as Adam and Eve were in this identity that they knew they are the children of God. Nothing could happen to them. They could never switch it. They were always in the law. They had always peace and rest in their relationships because they were independent spiritually from each other. But now we are all born with the idea that we're gods. And as a God, you don't need God, so you connect to Satan and people. You must believe what they say, and you must trust them. You have no choice to not do it, as long as this idea in us exists. We call it sinful nature or the old man, whatever we call it, it is the same thing. It must be killed in order that we should come back to put God again at the place where he has to be. And so all stories that we have in the Bible and all things that I experience in my practice are because humans are trusting, that is, binding themselves to humans, and believe what they say. We have in our Bible study the history of Joseph. And I think we don't need to look very in detail to it, but we understand the principle of the story. Jacob served 14 years for Rachel. Because after he served 7 years, instead his father giving him Rachel as wife, he gave him his older daughter, that was Leah. And then now he did not serve for Leah. So Laban now comes and says, okay, then serve another 7 years and I give you Rachel. And of course he married Rachel right away, but he still stayed and served 7 years. So he served 14 years for Rachel. And now she died, she passed away, and he was left with 2 sons from her. And of course the firstborn was his most beloved son. So he showed that. Now his brethren, who had this sinful nature and who were binding and who were bound to their father in the wrong binding, in the wrong trust, they said, in order to have the love of the Father, we need to get rid of our competition. He takes away all that we would be need, because we serve, we do, and Joseph gets all the benefits. And so they made a plan to sell Joseph. And Joseph was sold, but he showed through all his history that he had not this nature. He proved when he was sold that he trusted in God and was bound to him. He proved living with in Potiphar's house, if I remember well, it was about 15 years, that he served faithfully. And as a man, he was tempted from a beautiful woman to have intimacy with her. And he withstood her, for she was coming every day to seduce him. This proves that he had control over his sexuality and over his appetite. Because no one can do that. He who has not the Spirit of God, no man can resist to that. But he not even in his thought, because he said in himself, how can I do such a great thing and sin against God? So he did not say, oh, I have to take care because Potiphar might see me or might kill me. No, he was in a relationship with God on dependency, not with Potiphar. And that was tested. And when it was tested and proven correctly, he was put to the next test, and that was prison. And he showed even in prison that he was bound to God in trust, not in humans. Because he believed the dreams that God gave him. Those dreams that were for him a surprise and for his family as well. he should one day stay up and his brethren and his father and mother should bow down in front of him. So he believed that God was fulfilling those things. But how should he fulfill them in prison? So when Joseph proved himself through the tests, God brought him to the place he wanted him from the beginning. Now Joseph is an example for us in these last days. Joseph shows us that our enemies are not the people out there, but in our own family, in our own church. They will denounce us as evildoers, and they will bring us and sell us. But we will be okay with that because we are independent of them. We trust fully God. And when God has brought us to test after test, and maybe also we have to go to prison for God's sake, then we will do that also like Joseph and say, okay, we have a work to do here. And everywhere he was present, he worked, and he worked for God. He did that what he could. And so I think we must prepare ourselves like Joseph, because we will be tested. And the test is only one. Because the sinful nature cannot allow us to trust God. It will make us that we have to believe what a man says without being able to prove it. And we have to trust the human tie. So this are that what is put to test. And if God would be here instead of the humans, because we have not anymore our sinful nature, because we have crucified it and laid it aside, then we will prove that we never believe a human and we will never be tied in trust to a human. Jeremiah 17:5-6 says, "Thus says the Lord, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, and maketh flesh his arm, and whose heart departeth from the Lord. For he shall be like the heath in the desert, and shall not see when good cometh, but shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness, in a salt land, and not inhabited." Now you see, the one is trust that is invisible, but the effect is visible. I got a call from a gentleman, an Adventist, who has 42 years old, and he's despaired. He cannot sleep anymore because his wife left him. Why is he despaired? Because he loves his wife and he trusts the Lord that all what he does is right. He trusts his wife. He's bound to his wife. And it's in God's intention that things and evil things should happen that discover to us our bondage to humans. Because this is the evil that is there in the world. I never saw a patient that did not have the issue of trusting and believing humans. All our problems come because our sinful nature binds us to them. And God says, he who is bound to them is lost. So there's other two quotes that I want to quote about two dangers that we are having in this last crisis, in these last days. And this is the ties to the clergy, to the leaders in the church. It says here, Christ foresaw that the undue assumption of authority indulged by the scribes and Pharisees would not cease with the dispersion of the Jews. So they would further, everywhere they would be, the leaders, the scribes and Pharisees, would exercise and assume authority over others. He had the prophetic view of the work of exalting human authority to rule the conscience, which has been so terrible a curse to the church in all ages. Now, can anyone rule the conscience? Well, yes, today it's very clear the church leaders show you what is right and wrong. And if you don't comply and you have a faith issue that is different, you are expelled, you are discriminated because of your own consciousness. And it is here very clear, it's such a terrible curse to the church in all ages. In all ages. And his fearful denunciations of the scribes and Pharisees and his warnings to the people not to follow these blind leaders were placed on record as an admonition to future generations. So it was made for us. It says further, there are today thousands of professors of religion who can give no other reason for points of faith which they hold than that they were so instructed by their religious leaders. They passed the Savior's teaching almost unnoticed and placed implicit confidence in the words of the ministers. A lack of moral courage to step aside from the beaten track of the world leads many to follow in the steps of learned men. Yes, today you are destined to trust learned men. Because do you know, have you ever seen a virus? Have you ever have a lab today to see what's going on? You are destined to believe or not believe. Many to follow in the steps of learned men, and by their reluctance to investigate for themselves, they are becoming hopelessly fastened in the chains of error. Hopelessly fastened in the chains of error. So you see, there is a danger today, and we will see it because this is what is proven, that is see. All church leaders go the wrong way. Today it's evident. I mean the global church leaders, there might be here and there church leaders in a small place, but not in the general speaking. I haven't seen officials of churches, those who are really in charge. I mean, there are officials of churches who protest, but there are others those who are having the main influence, they are all on the track of science. And in my church the same. And as they lead on, millions of people are hopelessly fastened in the chains of error. So there is a danger of trusting the leaders who have made theology, who have higher education, who know grammar, who know Greek and Hebrews. That's a danger. She says, thousands are kept by that. But there is even a greater danger than the spiritual leaders. And that we find also in the same context. Many are the ways by which Satan works through human influence to bind his captives. So he has no other means except by human influence to bind his captives. Because you can only be bind to human or bind to God. He secures multitudes to himself by attaching them by the silken cords of affection to those who are enemies of the cross of Christ. Now, is there something evil to be attached to silken cords of affection to those who are enemies of Christ? Should we not love all the people? Yes, of course. But what is this attachment meaning? Is it at the output or at the input? Whatever this attachment may be, parental, filial, conjugal, or social, the effect is the same. The opposers of truth exert their power to control the conscience, and the souls held under their sway have not sufficient courage or independence to obey their own convictions of duty. In these days, I have patients who I would never think they take the injection, but they took it because their wife suggested it, and the wife took it. There's another woman because her partner and her son, they are convinced about the need of this procedure, so she did it as well, even though she's convicted it's not the right thing to do. So the more people do something, the more people follow their example. Because someone is bound by attaching to himself with the silken cords of affection. So multitudes, she says here, he secures multitudes. In the other, she uses the expression thousands. And here she says multitudes. Because the power of personal relationship is bigger in the family ties than that to the clergy. But in both ways, he secures his captives and makes them forever bound to him. So if you have a daughter or a husband or a wife that take the mark of the beast, you know that's the final test. Of course, they will deny. They say, no, the mark of the beast is not something visible, or, they will come up with all these arguments like they have today, all the arguments. But when we see that is written here, plain, not as a symbol, but as a plain understanding. If you take that sign on your hand or on your forehead, then you know that's forever over. But if then you're bound by a silken cord of affection to those who take the mark of the beast, that is, your sinful nature has not been destroyed totally, you must take the mark as well. No choice. That's why it is so serious that we understand the period in which we live. To understand that everything counts for final decision. We can never have rest in our relationships except we are totally spiritually independent of them. Christ is our example. He rested in his Father. No matter what his disciples did, he accepted it. He let it happen. He was forgotten by all. He was left alone. He was denied by his beloved disciple. And he was put to shame, so to say, by his own disciple who killed himself. Jesus endured it all. And he remained in rest because he did nothing for himself, because he was selfless like his Father. That's why he had rest in all relationships. When his mother or his brother came to him, he said, "Who is my mother and who is my brother? Are not those who do the will of God my brother and my mother and my father?" So he was very plain to whom he was attached. He was attached to God, and he would co-work with all those who would be also attached to his Father. They were his siblings. They were those that he could co-work with. And the same must happen with us. This final crisis is just about relationships. And if I have a relationship that I have at my entrance that is not God, then that relationship will prove my eternal fate. So let's examine our lives. Let's be very clear. Let's look into the mirror. Let God help us through the different crises that we are here, that we have, and in this final crisis, as it gets more intense, to know for sure that we do nothing more for ourselves. That we don't need for ourselves to live. We don't need for ourselves to eat. We don't need for ourselves to sleep. We don't need for ourselves nothing. We only need it to serve God. We need no relationship for ourselves. We need the relationship with God. But even that is not for ourselves. It is in order to pass the love on to those around us. So we need nothing for ourselves. I hope we grasp that. Because if we are going to stay faithful like Joseph, in all the tests that we are already in, and those where we fall, we raise up and clear the heart from the deception, God will put us into the front like Joseph before the whole world And the whole world will see the loving character of God. That will be the last rays of light. But they will be the most powerful that ever existed after Christ on earth. And they will be global. Everyone. For the most it will just be as a witness. But for many it will be eternal salvation. What a great call we have. Let us follow our Lord and be like Him. To never do anything again for ourselves. To become selfless like God. Then we will have complete rest in our families, family ties. Amen.